will start, as I said, with the wines of Bordeaux. So in addition to the Grand Vin from the estates that DBR own and run in Bordeaux, they also have been making for several years a range of wines that are more accessible, a range of Bordeaux wines that represent the diversity of Bordeaux. And the objective with these wines is to make, it's buying into the dream, making these wines accessible, easy drinking, everyday drinking. And Diane Flamand has been making these wines since 2004. And it's a great place to start the tasting because we have two wines side by side, the Emilion, which is Merlot driven, and the Pauillac, which is of course Cabernet driven. And so it's a great introduction to the diversity that Bordeaux has to offer. So Diane, would you like to talk us through these wines?
Thank you, Wendy. So just a few words before starting the tasting about the collection range, perhaps. The collection range of wines has been created at the beginning of the 90s by DBR, and the aim of the collection wines was to offer the consumers easy drinking, approachable wines for daily consumption. So my job is to select and elaborate wines, harmonious, well-balanced, elegant wines, always having in mind the flagship of the company, Chateau Lafite, and its great qualities, of course, harmony, elegance, fineness, which are, of course,
the signatures.
The signature of Chateau Lafite. So we produce Bordeaux White, Bordeaux Red, Emilion, and Pauillac. Emilion is the last wine appellation, prestigious appellation added to the range recently. The 2012 vintage is the first vintage produced for DBR. And this is very interesting to compare both today because you probably know that in Bordeaux we can blend different grapes, and it's a big chance for us to play on the different possibilities and the different grape varieties allowed in Bordeaux in order to produce well-balanced and complex wines. So you will compare a Saint-Emilion wines, which is elaborated with a high percentage of Merlot, 82%. Of Merlot for the Saint-Emilion 2012 and 14% Cabernet Franc, and a little tiny percentage of Cabernet Sauvignon, knowing that Merlot and Cabernet Franc are the two main grapes planted on the right bank of the Dordogne in the Bordeaux area. And then the Pauillac, of course, which is a very specific and typical wine of its appellation, with a high percentage of Cabernet Sauvignon, 70% of Cabernet Sauvignon and 30% of Merlot.
And I understand in the Pauillac that some of the wines that enter this blend are coming from the DBR estates.
Yes, you're right. The Pauillac wine is the only wine in the range, in the collection range, which is elaborated with partly wines coming from Lafite and du Emilion. And in the 2011 vintage, 50% of the wines come from our two estates. So let's start with the Saint-Emilion 2012, perhaps. So, of course, this is a very young vintage, and it has a very purple red color due to its young age. But you must know that all these wines are elaborated to be drunk very young, on the fruit, on the freshness. So all the collection wines are really ready to be drunk immediately after the bottling. So according to the appellation, you can drink them immediately, or you can wait a little bit. Of course, Saint-Emilion and Pauillac, because of their prestigious terroir, you can keep them at least 5 years without problem, in fact.
And would you recommend decanting these wines when you serve them?
Always, yes. I would recommend to decant all the red wines. Depending on the wines, you can decant them just a few minutes before serving them.
And that's enough
15
to allow
minutes
them to breathe.
for the Saint-Emilion and Pauillac to allow the aromas to open and to breathe. And of course, much more for the great chateaus. So Merlot gives the wine a lot of fruity notes on the nose, and you can recognize some red fruit aromas and blackberries aromas in this Saint-Emilion, like strawberries, blueberry.
It's very fruit-driven.
Yes.
It's very interesting what you were saying. For such a young wine, 2012, it is remarkably accessible. It is very,
Yes.
very ready for drinking now. Yeah.
And it's really elaborated for that, to be accessible and ready to be drunk very young. So, and one thing is very important too for this kind of wines, they are made to be drunk while eating.
Yeah,
That's
they're food
really very
wines.
important. And to be,
Shared,
matched with
yeah.
food.
So what would you recommend serving with this wine?
So I would recommend grilled meat, in fact, and strong cheeses, for example, because it's young, so
Yes, it's
quite
young,
tannic on the palate. So Merlot is supposed to give the wine soft tannins too, round attack, roundness and softness on the palate, something very, very easy to drink. And we commonly say that the right bank wines are easier to taste and to drink than left bank wines because of this high percentage of Merlot.
Which is
and
why
Merlot
even a
is
2012 is very accessible.
Yes, and
you have that
Merlot is
signature.
very accessible,
Okay.
much more accessible than Cabernet Sauvignon, usually. So on the palate, you have a very soft and round attack, and then a well-integrated tannins, and at the end, a very nice freshness and good length.
And a very good length on the
Yes,
finish.
yes.
Very nice.
Licorice at the end of the
Very
palate.
spicy, yeah.